Good morning. It's excellent to be with you, and thank you for the opportunity, Kemal and Matthias as well. Good to see you. We have a wonderful lineup today of companies and impressions and people who are going to give you insights into where we are in the state of innovation. And I wanted to give you my own thoughts on that in the first 5 minutes of today to frame it so you understand how I come at the topic. I put together some slides, and if you'd like a copy, you just need to send me an email. As was mentioned, I run Ariadne Capital. That's our late-stage seed digital fund, so we invest across Europe, and we also operate what's called Entrepreneur Country. There we go. Let's get the first slide up there. Let's see. I'm going to tell you about 3 visions of the future this morning, because I think we're at a crossroads, and when we celebrate the 10-year anniversary of ICT Spring, I think it will be instructive as to how these different visions of the future have materialized. And a very special focus, I think, today, we need to be thinking about the business models. Our whole business model framework is called ecosystem economics, and we think that that's how the winners and the losers of this exponential age are actually defined. But let me tell you about these 3 visions of the future and think about whether or not this resonates for you. First of all, there's a kind of vision of the future which says that the technology firms, of which we have many of them with us today, are taking over every industry. We have Facebook, which announced it's going into banking. We've got Yahoo going into TV. Oracle's buying every drones business out there. So there's a lot of evidence that the technology firms are taking over every industry. And a lot of people would bet that those are going to be the winners of this next decade. There's a second vision of the future, though, and a lot of talk about digital disruption. And a lot of kind of sexy digital disruptors, the Airbnbs, the Ubers, the Teslas, they get a lot of column inches in the media. And when people talk about digital disruption, they tend to focus on these multi-billion-pound companies, and it seems like maybe those are going to be the winners. But there's a third category, and I would argue that it's kind of the rest of the world. 90% of the world is not Airbnb, Uber, Facebook, Amazon, and Apple. So what happens to the rest of the world? What happens with them? And I would argue that it's less about digital disruption. Sure, that's happening, but it's how digital enables existing businesses. And how does David and Goliath dance? How do we get the startups and the corporates to engage with each other? Now, I come from Palo Alto, so I guess if I had a bias, it should actually be Palo Alto, but I've lived in Europe for 25 years, actually, since 1988. And the macro trend is really that little guy, that entrepreneur, the face of every entrepreneur, he can come from anywhere, right? He's not just a Palo Alto face. That macro trend, that great entrepreneurs are coming out of every corner of the planet, is the macro trend, not that you have to go to Palo Alto to build a great company. I'm going to give you 2 reasons why we need to care about that little guy. And those 2 reasons is the entrepreneur sees the future. That's what gets them going every morning and why they work 100 hours a week. They have an insight into the future by virtue of some experience, the way they were raised, the travel, their specific talent, their career experience. They understand something about the future and they can't believe that it doesn't exist, and they feel compelled to bring it to life. At Ariadne Capital, we think that every entrepreneur has a secret, and the secret is released as they build their business. But the second reason is actually the more important reason, because a lot of people can have insight into the future. And this is not really a futurology conference today. This is a conference about concretely how we make it happen. How do we make that innovation happen for the rest of the world, not just the cloistered few who live in the kind of billion-pound world startup environments. And that second reason is entrepreneurs are willing to live abnormal lives to bring that innovation to the future. Society benefits from the abnormal commitment that they have to bringing that innovation to life. So There was, 15 years ago, when I went up to London after business school in INSEAD, there was a whole focus on the digital entrepreneur in the kind of first wave of the internet. And the digital David, the internet entrepreneur in 1999, was very focused on kind of taking over the industry, right? The Davids were going to become the new Goliaths and so forth. But I would argue that over the past 15 years, what has happened is that those technologies, the internet and every sort of derivative technology of the internet, has basically just penetrated our lives. Regardless of the financial crisis in 2001 or 2008, we're living our lives more and more online. A new common sense has emerged, and really it's not about David assassinating Goliath, but how do David and Goliath dance? How do the social and economic institutions embrace these new enabling technologies? So I want to put to you this grid. This grid is about how the digital Davids, who understand that consumer data is powering all services, they understand that the world has gone network and that ecosystem economics is driving the new frameworks. They understand that the market is just bigger than the company size that they're in. Those Davids are actually looking for a highway. They're looking for distribution. And the big opportunity for larger corporates today, mid to large enterprises that are not technology firms, is to open up and to give those B2B SaaS companies, the digital enablers, give them a way to get to market. To not necessarily try to innovate themselves, but to be the highway for the digital cars. So if there's one central thought that I'd like you to understand today, is that the world has gone network, that all business models have moved from linear to network, and that the key problem for digital entrepreneurs is how they acquire customers. And they shouldn't have to do a deal with the app marketplaces, the iOS and Apple app marketplaces. They should be able to do a deal with any large enterprise that can engage with them. And those David and Goliath deals will be happening over the next decade. We see just a couple of them here. But the central point is that we shouldn't have to go someplace else to do that. This innovation, these David and Goliath partnerships should be happening across the continent. They should be happening in Europe. And I put this to you as one model, which I hope that the technology people on the panel today will be talking about. But the opportunity is not how can we create more Facebook, Apple, Amazons, and Googles, but how can the existing large newspaper groups and banks and insurance companies and retailers, etc., how can they open up and become platform companies to engage with the app economy? What's necessary for that to happen? How will they engage with data and so forth? So I'm going to give you a couple of just quick examples of ecosystem economics. We really believe that innovation is not about technology. It's about economics. Otherwise, we'd all be flying the Concorde. We're not. We're packed into jumbo jets. Monetize is a company in the United Kingdom which we backed in 2004. Its central idea was that mobile banking was going to need an ecosystem. It was going to have to cut in the mobile operators, the banks, give a lower cost of capital to the individual who was being charged 22% by companies like Western Union. It was thinking about the ecosystem at the beginning of setting out, not just selling software into the banks. It was thinking about the economics of the ecosystem. As a result of taking that approach to the market over the past 12 years, they've created themselves at the heart of the industry, and they're now worth $2 billion. They are acquiring their US competitors. They service 1,000 financial institutions. They are a mobile money digital enabler. They're not disrupting the banks. They're not trying to become the banks. They're not pushing the banks out. They're re-intermediating the banks into their industry, giving them a cut of digital revenues that would have gone to other players in the market if they didn't exist. And by doing that so well over the past 12 years, they've created a market capitalization, as I said, that's increased to more than $2 billion. So the central question that anyone needs to ask themselves is, who are my natural allies? It's not just about doing things on your own in a network world. It's not just about how smart you are, it's about in whose interest is it for me to operate to achieve a certain market position? Who are my natural allies? Every entrepreneur asks themselves this question. Who do I go to market with? If the corporates and the larger enterprises also ask themselves, how do I find the digital Davids that are looking for me to go to market, we would see more of these partnerships happen and more of these digital P&Ls built faster. I'll give you one final example of what I see happening in the world. Let's talk about Google for just a moment. Google say that they organize the world's information. They actually do a lot more than that, don't they? They organize the economics of the world's information. That's how they've created a multi-billion-pound market capitalization company. And I long thought that there would be a different set of economics that would challenge their model of using our data and giving the individual nothing for it. We get no upside for the use of our data in their transaction. And I found that entrepreneur. His name was John Paleomalites, and he was building a price comparison financial services engine, because so much innovation happens when it comes to your money. He was giving people a cashback for the use of their data in the transaction, which may not seem revolutionary, but the point is just that he was giving people an economic upside for the use of their data. And through the course of the negotiations with Google, Google became so intrigued and threatened by what they were doing that they bought the firm, but for 122 times EBITDA multiple. So industries are being transformed by digital business models, this is true. And in 2014, network benefits accrue to those firms who understand their role in the ecosystem, and crucially, who organize the economics for those ecosystems. That's the prized position to achieve. This in turn leads to exceptional returns for their shareholder. Now that's what we're doing at Entrepreneur Country, is we're helping those Davids and Goliaths connect across Europe. We're helping them discover and be discovered. So, I'd like to now introduce the next speakers who are going to each share with you their visions of the central topic today about the consumer experience. We're going to start with David Rich, who is the Senior Vice President of MasterCard Advisors. He's going to be speaking to you about translating little data into big insights. Could I please have David Rich come to the stage? Thank you.